News Special Report, The Tragedy of Isidora and the Fight for Justice in Chile. Anchor Intro, Good evening. Tonight, we turn our attention to an event that has pierced the heart of Chilean society. A 2-year-old girl, Isidora, has lost her life in a tragic fall from an 11th floor apartment in the Las Condes district of Santiago. While the immediate loss is devastating, the subsequent revelations regarding the circumstances of her death and the subsequent legal response have ignited a nationwide firestorm. Tonight, we look behind the headlines to examine the negligence, the systemic failures, and the urgent push for legislative change that this tragedy has forced upon our country. The incident, a preventable tragedy. On the morning that would mark a before and after for the residents of a high-rise building in Las Condes, 2-year-old Isidora was under the care of her father, Jorge Constanzo Chavez. According to evidence presented during the formalization hearing, the circumstances leading to the tragedy began the night before. Following a social gathering within the same building complex, the father reportedly left to visit a nightclub, returning to his apartment in the early hours of the morning, roughly 5 a.m. What followed is a timeline of catastrophic negligence. While the father slept, the child was left unattended in a separate room. The apartment, situated on the 11th floor, lacked fundamental safety measures. Most notably, the windows, which were fully operable and lacked protective netting, became the point of egress for the toddler. Tragically, it was not the father who discovered the loss of his daughter. Neighbors, having witnessed the horror, raised the alarm. The realization of the tragedy hit the public consciousness with the force of a hammer blow, a father asleep after a night of revelry, while his child suffered a fall that experts argue was entirely avoidable. The legal battle, a clash of classifications. The legal response to Isidora's death has become the primary source of public indignation. During the initial hearing, the prosecution painted a picture of clear, culpable negligence. They argued for the classification of manslaughter by omission with implied malice, homicidio por omisión con dolo eventual. The prosecution's logic was stark. Foreseeability: a parent living on the 11th floor is inherently aware of the dangers posed by unprotected windows to a 2-year-old. Deliberate omission: by failing to install safety netting or secure the windows, and by further compromising his capacity to supervise the child through alcohol consumption, the father acted with a reckless disregard for human life. However, the court's decision to reclassify the crime as a quasi-delict of homicide, quasi-delict de homicidio, essentially an involuntary manslaughter charge, sent shockwaves through the community. To many, this legal categorization feels like a mitigation of the father's moral and professional responsibility. It resulted in the denial of the prosecution's request for pretrial detention, replaced instead by lighter measures such as a travel ban, arraigo nacional, and periodic court check-ins. A mother's grief and the public outcry. The voice of Isidora's mother, Gloria, has been central to the national narrative. In emotional interviews, she has laid bare a history of struggle. She detailed a relationship where the father had originally questioned his paternity, demanding DNA verification, a detail that has added a layer of betrayal to her grief. Gloria described the father's visitation rights as a cold, bureaucratic necessity rather than an expression of genuine paternal connection. Her public statements, along with the testimonies of family members, paint a portrait of a mother who feels her daughter was failed by the very system designed to protect the most vulnerable. Public opinion in Chile has been unforgiving. Across social media platforms and in the halls of Congress, the consensus is clear: the law must reflect the gravity of the oversight. Critics argue that accidental is a term that cannot be applied when basic safety precautions, like window nets, are ignored in high-altitude living. The systemic change, the Valentín Law. If there is any sliver of hope to emerge from this darkness, it is the renewed urgency behind the Valentín Law. Named after another young victim who lost his life in a similar fall from a 13th-floor apartment in San Pedro de la Paz, this legislative initiative has been languishing in the corridors of power for months. Following Isidora's death, the Senate moved with unprecedented speed to approve the bill this past Wednesday. The Valentín Law seeks to mandate safety, require the installation of structural protections, nets, barriers, in all high-rise buildings where children under 12 reside. Update urban planning, integrate safety protocols into the co-ownership and architectural regulations of new developments. Enforce responsibility, shift the burden of safety from optional to a mandatory, legally enforceable standard. As Pamela Gutierrez, the mother of the law's namesake, stated, "Children don't understand risk. We have been pushing to bring this issue to light so that we don't have to mourn any more victims." Conclusion: a nation in mourning. The death of Isidora is not merely a local tragedy in Las Condes, it is a mirror held up to the rapid vertical growth of Chilean cities and the lagging pace of our safety regulations. As the judicial process continues, the questions remain: how can justice be served for a life that was so carelessly lost? And how can a country ensure that a child's home is a sanctuary, not a death trap? For now, the hashtags #JusticeForIsidora and #Chile represent a collective demand for a legal system that treats child neglect with the severity it deserves. As the legislative gears begin to turn toward the enactment of the Valentín Law, one thing is certain: the memory of a 2-year-old girl in Las Condes will serve as the catalyst for a safer future for thousands of others.